Welcome to September 3rd, 2024 meeting of Troy City Council. Please, everyone, including council, please silence your cell phones for the duration of the meeting. An invocation and pledge tonight will be by Mr. Twist. Please stand.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we live in a great country, that we have so many freedoms. We thank you for the city that we live in and how nice it is and how many conveniences we have, Lord. And we just ask that you would come tonight and guide and direct us on what is best for the city. And we always ask that you watch over our first responders, police, fire, those serving in the military, Lord, giving of their time and putting themselves in harm's way. We ask that in your name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Knight, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Marshall? Here. Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Sievert?
Present.
Mr. Whidden?
Here.
Mr. Schilling?
Present.
Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
Mr. Twist?
Present.
Nee? Here. Mr. Pierce?
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you. Would you please read the summary of August 19th council meeting minutes?
Minutes of Council, August 19, 2024. Committee reports. Finance Committee recommended that legislation be prepared authorizing an agreement with Peterson Construction Company related to the valve replacement project at the water plant. Law and Ordinance Committee recommended that Council support the recommendation of the Planning Commission and adopt ordinance number 028-2024, a rezoning along East Water Street. Resolution number R45-2024, agreement with Miami County Public Defenders Commission, was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R46-2024, agreement with Peterson Construction regarding the water treatment plant valve project, was given first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 028-2024, a rezoning of property on West Water Street, was given third reading and adopted. Following various comments, council adjourned at 7:24.
Move to accept the minutes as read.
Motion to accept the minutes by Mr. Twist, second by Mr. Pierce. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Committee reports tonight. We're starting with Community Partnerships Committee. Mr. Sievert has this one.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee members, Sievert and Twist, met August 26th to consider authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety and the Board of Park Commissioners to execute a transfer agreement to implement the previously authorized Memorandum of Understanding between the City Board of Park Commissioners and the Troy Board of Education related to the school building project. Committee Chair Marshall abstained to avoid a conflict of interest being employed by the Troy Board of Education. The Board of Park Commissioners has recommended that the MOU be implemented at this time. The committee supports the recommendation of the Board of Park Commissioners and recommends that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety and the President of the Board of Park Commissioners to execute a transfer agreement with the Troy Board of Education to implement the MOU referenced herein. The committee supports emergency legislation so that the Troy Board of Education can comply with the October deadline establishing the Ohio School Facilities Commission related to the transfer of the Hook Park and Campbell Park at Cookson School properties. Respectfully submitted myself, Mr. Twist, and Ms. Marshall is chairman of the committee, but she is abstaining.
Any additional questions or comments on this report? We'll move on.
I have one.
Yes, Mr. Pierce.
Is it the opinion of the law director that is necessary for those who have employment with the school or are benefiting, such as from marriage with somebody that's an employee of the school, to abstain from this vote?
Well, as just a general matter first, council ultimately makes a decision as far as, conflicts and things like that, and each individual member is responsible for that. However, that is a different issue for having a family member involved, especially given that the family member is not in any sort of position to gain from that. But that is, I would say, my general guidance that, that does not present the same sort of issue as employees of the Board of Education. Did that answer your?
Repeat the last 1 minute
Okay.
again.
Sure. It's a different situation having a family member. Ultimately, this council is the judge of that, and the issue is whether or not your family member has any sort of benefit from that, and it doesn't appear that is the case. However, I have to put a caveat on that, is ultimately council makes that decision. And, you certainly, the other council members could step up, but it doesn't appear to be an issue.
Thank you.
Claire?
That's right.
That's mud, right? All righty. Moving on to Parks and Recs, Mrs. Westfall.
Oh, I don't have the report. Sorry.
Sorry about
I
that.
was not at this meeting, but I will read it. Yeah, can you read it? That'll be easier for me.
Oh,
All right.
there's page 2 of the...
Oh, I apologize. All right, so the summary, the committee members, Marshall and Whidden, met August 26th to consider the recommendation of the Board of Park Commissioners that Bruckner Park be sold to the Troy Miami County Public Library in the amount of $100,000 based on specific terms and conditions. The Ohio Revised Code provides for the transfer of property between municipal corporations and public libraries. Now, where do I read? There we go, sorry. Page 2. Recommendation, the committee supports the recommendation of the Board of Park Commissioners and recommends that legislation be prepared authorizing the sale of the approximately 0.46 acre parcel known as Bruckner Park, parcel number D09-250190, located at 400 West Water Street to the Troy Miami County Public Library based on all the terms and conditions contained in the recommendation of the Board of Park Commissioners and outlined in the detailed report. Respectfully submitted by Christy Marshall, Jeffrey Whidden, and myself as chair, Susan Westfall.
Any questions, comments? I have a question, but I'll send it to Patrick. Moving on, streets and sidewalks, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, sir. Committee members Phillips and Schilling met on August 26th to review the request for increased authorization for the paving program. Due to some field adjustments and quantity changes, the final cost of the unit price contract is $1,518,656.65, which exceeds the $1.5 million authorization. And it was the recommendation of the committee that legislation be prepared increasing the authorization for the 2024 paving program from $1.5 million to $1.518,656.65. As the work has been completed and final payment is due to the contractor, the committee does support emergency legislation. And this is respectfully submitted to Mr. Schilling, Mrs. Westfall, and myself as chair.
Any additional questions, comments? All right. We have reached the point of, we have citizen comments on anything that's on our agenda tonight. 2-minute limit. If you'd like to speak to any of those items, please come to the podium, give Mrs. Knight your name and address, and have your 2 minutes worth of say. Mr. Kerber will be timekeeper if necessary. No one wants to do that. We will move on to the resolutions tonight. Mrs. Knight, please read Resolution R 47, 2024.
Resolution number R 47, 2024. Resolution amending Resolution number R 11, 2024, authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2024 paving program and declaring an emergency. This increases the total authorization to $1,518,656.65. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Twist, second by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Sievert,
Yes.
Mr. Whidden,
Yes.
Mr. Schilling,
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mrs. Snee,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Twist, second by Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Whidden,
Yes.
Mr. Schilling,
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mrs. Snee,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Sievert.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted.
Moving on to our ordinances. Mrs. Knight, please read ordinance O 31, 2024.
Ordinance number O31, 2024, ordinance authorizing the sale of the property known as Bruckner Park to the Troy-Miami County Public Library. This will be sold at a cost of $100,000. There are certain deed restrictions. This has been recommended by the Board of Park Commissioners. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Motion to move to suspend by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Schilling,
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mrs. Snee,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Sievert,
Yes.
Mr. Whidden.
Yes. Move to adopt the resolution. Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Whidden, second by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Westfall,
Yes.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mrs. Snee,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Sievert,
Yes.
Mr. Whidden,
Yes.
Mr. Schilling.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, will you please read ordinance O 32, 2024?
Ordinance number O32, 2024. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, and the Board of Park Commissioners of the City of Troy, Ohio, to execute a transfer agreement with the Troy City Schools Board of Education to implement the memorandum of understanding with the Troy City Schools Board of Education regarding future educational and recreational opportunities for residents within the Troy City School District and declaring an emergency. This implements the memorandum of understanding, particularly to have the transfer of the properties of Hook Park and Campbell Park Cookson School be done to meet an October deadline. This has been also recommended by the Board of Park Commissioners. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Pierce, seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
Mrs. Snee,
I need to recuse myself due to my employment with the Troy City Schools Board of Education.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall,
I also will abstain due to the fact that I'm employed by Troy City Schools.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Sievert,
Yes.
Mr. Whidden,
Yes.
Mr. Schilling,
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall.
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Snee,
I recuse myself due to my employment, Board of Education.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Again, abstaining due to employment.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Mrs. Knight, could you please read ordinance O-33, 2024?
Ordinance number O-33, 2024, ordinance to accept the application for the annexation of certain territory containing 107.559 acres, more or less, in Concord Township to the city of Troy, Ohio. This is the final acceptance of the ELC LLC and Port annexation, which is 107.559 acres, Concord Township. Council had previously approved the consent. This is the first reading.
Move for suspension.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules for the readings of Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Move to adopt the ordinance by Mr. Phillips, second by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you. Is there any communications or announcements?
No, sir.
Mayor, do you have any comments tonight?
There's nothing this evening, thank you.
The Law Director.
Mr. President, I have no comments this evening.
Mr. Sievert.
Did you say me?
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a few comments. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to thank Chief McKinney. I see him in the audience. There was a little Facebook sort of debate going on about homelessness that was sort of permeating through the community, and I thought Chief McKinney demonstrated some leadership and explanation by posting a very well-informed post, well, not well-informed, but informative post about the situations and what the city could and could not do. And I saw him in the audience, and that reminded me of that today, that that was, from our perspective as representatives of the city, we thank you for that prompt response and how that was handled. Second, I would like to thank publicly Tom Kleps and Brian Sexton, who's no longer here, but they both led the charge on the Troy football, soccer, and fields for the turf. If you have not seen it yet, it's absolutely stunning what they've done there. I know it took a lot of hard work and a lot of investment, and I guess the Ernst family should be included in there as well for planting the seeds. But they very well done. And finally, recently the Troy 1984 had their 40th class reunion downtown. It was during Tour de Donut, and I sort of call it the Kings Island syndrome. Kings Island isn't as important to us because it's right next door than it is from people that come from states away to come to Kings Island. The same thing happened here. You know, we live in Troy on a daily basis. We see downtown. We see it on a frequent basis. We see the warts and the pimples as well as the, you know, clean-shaven faces of downtown. But when you view it from the perspective of people, some who haven't been here for 30, 35 years, and look back to see where Troy was 30, 35 years ago to where it is right now, it was an amazing transformation for a number of these individuals who came up and expressed how impressed they were and what a beautiful downtown we have and what a beautiful community we have. and sometimes I don't think that we see that or get that shared enough, but it was shared very frequently by a number of the individuals in that class. So I wanted to pass that on and say kudos to everybody who works for the city for making us the fine community that we have. That's it.
Mrs. Snee.
I'll just add quickly that I was actually at a math workshop this summer in Cleveland, and the person leading it, a Miami University professor, when I said I was from Troy, what he mentioned was the Tour de Donut and how much they loved it. So it is known, and thank you for reminding me it's been 40 years since 1984.
But not Troy's class.
Thank you.
Mrs. Westfall.
I don't have a whole lot to say, but I did talk to somebody that attended the Tour de Donut and had a great time, loved it, and felt like it was very well run.
Mr. Schilling, looks like he's got some comments.
I do tonight. With the annexation review here for the poor annexation, again, the location of that, I know there haven't been any plans submitted, but my guess is, and of course the developers, I think my guess is that's probably going to be another subdivision. And that will bring the total of 4 subdivisions that would be under construction in the city of Troy. And I know we've talked over the last month about the importance of getting the transportation correct on alternate types of transportation using these multi-use recreational trails. We've talked about putting these on the boundaries of some of these subdivisions so that we start building these trails so they can lead people to the downtown without having to get into their SUVs and other things, and to do that. And so I think this is a great opportunity to look at this. And so what I'm doing, Mr. President, is asking you to bring this item to the correct committee for discussions with the possibility of looking at changing our zoning and building codes to incorporate these multi-use recreational trails as necessary. Of course, we would like to see them in front of the subdivisions. I think it would be important to see these trails passed and used in our industrial areas so that the workers that are trying to reach the places of their places of work again have an alternate way to get there besides having driving a vehicle. Some people can't afford to drive a vehicle, as we know. We've talked about this before. Some people are not eligible to drive vehicles, and so they have to use alternate means of transportation. We have very limited public transportation in the city of Troy and Miami County, and I think this would be an excellent step to look at this, and as we continue to attract new businesses, and as our businesses that are located in Troy continue to expand, I think this would be an issue that we ought to take a look at in committee. And then the other reason I would look at it is that we will soon be looking at completing the expansion of West Main Street. I know we've talked about the possibility of a roundabout on South Stanfield and Experiment Farm and West Main Street, with the final construction all the way out to Washington Road, and that's our next step. I think we have to look at installing a multi-use recreational trail on the north side of West Main Street. This would by doing that would give people, bicyclists, other people, an opportunity or the ability to essentially get to downtown by going over the I-75 bridge and into Westbrook, and then you're 3-4 blocks away from the bicycle trail there, and then you're right downtown. So again, I think that as we look at redoing that part of West Main Street, we have to include a recreational trail type of a pathway, again, to help 1/6 of the population of the city of Troy access to downtown without having, again, to get in their vehicles and drive and try to find a place to park. So I would like to offer this to you, Mr. President, and have this assigned to a committee for further discussion to possibly generate some legislation to change our zoning and building codes, and I know the firm that we've hired to do this. These items are under consideration now, but I think we need to, before we get any more plans in, I know there's some hesitancy on council to try to adjust these plans. I know the ODA administration, has not been a fan of negotiation, and again, of course, the planning commission is ham-handed in handling these types of things. So, again, I would like to get council involved on this, and I'd like to get this before the correct committee.
Thank you for your comments. We will definitely take your concerns under advisement moving forward.
Thank you.
Mrs. Marshall?
I feel like I should say something, but I have nothing.
You could tell a joke like Todd, or...
Don't put me on the spot like that.
All right. Mr. Whidden?
I wanted to, I guess, congratulate, I don't know if that's the right word, residents of my neighborhood, the First Ward. There seems to be something in the water where there was a lot of home improvement this summer, and all turned out fabulous, really improved, I thought, the entire neighborhood. So congratulations to all my neighbors.
Great.
Who got out there this summer and got a lot of work done.
Great. Mr. Pierce?
I'm thankful for the citizens of Troy, how they handled the Tour de Donut as well. We become a very good host city to bicyclists, and it's, sometimes it takes a little bit extra patience, but I wanted to thank the planners of it, but then also thank the citizens for making this such a great event too.
Mr. Phillips?
Thank you, sir. I unfortunately didn't get to partake of any of our activities in the last 2 weeks because of COVID, and now with a bad back. So I haven't been out and around the last couple of weeks. And weather was great, though, but anyway.
Mr. Lott?
I did.
Mr. Twist?
I have nothing to report at this time. Is that what you say?
Something along those lines.
We have comments
Have a
from
couple
staff,
variations.
from the audience. Nothing tonight. Then I think we are adjourned, and we will see you in 2 weeks on the 16th. Is that right? No. Huh?
The 16th.
16th, yes, 16th.